very difficult to disentangle all this stuff because these guys were allied with the Nazis, and yet at the same time, in a screwball way, I'm going to show you something now you won't believe. In a screwball way, it didn't translate necessarily into anti-Jewish actions or feelings. And here you're going to see something about one of the leading Japanese generals in World War II. I'll say it again, one of the leading Japanese generals. And look what the guy does.
The year 1938. In the extreme cold of temperatures below 20 degrees, many Jewish refugees fleeing from Nazi persecution were held up in Otopol at the Soviet border of Manchuria. While the Manchukuo Foreign Ministry Immigration Office refused to grant them visas due to the watchfulness of their German allies, the Harbin secret military chief at the time, Major General Kiichiro Higuchi, saved the lives of those Jewish refugees on the verge of freezing to death, estimated to be up to 20,000. Japan is not a vassal state of Nazi Germany. Is it truly correct for us to carry Hitler's stick to make misery on unwanted people? He rightfully declared to the Chief of Staff of the Kanto Army, Major General Hideki Tojo. It would be 2 years until Chiyumi Sugihara was appointed as Lithuanian consulate in Kaunas and issued visas for life. In later years, when Kiichiro Higuchi was surrounded by the United States fleet, he also successfully evacuated the Kiska garrison of 5,200 people without casualties, thus preventing the inevitable suicide. He further ordered the fist on the table counterattack on the Soviet army that had invaded the northern Japan after the end of the war and crushed their ambitions of occupying Hokkaido. He also achieved the Japanese Army's last victory on Shumushu Island. These three incidents were also exceptional as Higuchi's decisions were grounded in humane principles. One can learn from the aspirations of Kiichiro Higuchi, who followed the path of a righteous human being. I believe this is important. On December 26, 1937, the Far East Jewish Congress was held in the Harbin Chamber of Commerce Club for the first time. Abraham Kaufman, chairman of the Far East Jewish Association, invited Higuchi and asked him to speak at the Congress. My dear friends, the Jewish people, I am sorry you do not have a homeland with soil in the world anywhere, which is unusual. In each field, Jews are not inferior in science, art, and industry when compared to any other ethnic group. You have God-given talents and endowments not inferior to anyone today. History proves this. However, in the 20th century, we see in some places in the world where Jews are being expelled. To witness this in the name of humanitarianism, also as a member of the human race, I am deeply regretful. One country is chasing you out as undesirables, though you should be brethren. If people are banished, their destination should be explicitly prepared in advance. Expulsion without designating a destination is a treatment equal to mass murder by sword. As a private individual, I despise such conduct. Give them a land that is their homeland before chasing them out. When the speech was over, Higuchi was cheered and applauded by more than 1,000 Jewish guests.
You wouldn't think of that. You understand? No, you can't tell. And it's guys like it's funny because they're brutal to the Chinese. They're brutal to the Koreans. But they weren't, for some crazy reason, they weren't brutal to the Jews. There's people that have theories about all the rest of it. But I'm not going into the theories tonight because that'll take us too far. I can tell you that, as you all know, the following year, in 40, 41, at the Mir Yeshiva, I know everybody knows this story, they came over and they weren't persecuted. They're allowed to stay in Kobe. There were Jewish communities over there. This guy Kaufman, by the way, who we mentioned before, the head of the Jewish thing in Harbin, was a cousin of Lubavitcher Rebbe. It's interesting. Not from. And in 1941 already, when tensions were really building up, the Agudas Rabbanim and Rabbi Mendelovitz sent over a guy from Torah, Frank Newman, who was, I think, a businessman, to go and explore the possibilities, because I want to tell you something strange, but tragic, and that is, in 1938, 39, 40, 41, the Japanese were 100% willing to take in 6 million Jews and put them in Manchuria. And that's 100%. And it's a time, and you know and I know, Roosevelt didn't let them in. No country let them in. There was nowhere to go. Now, you can't say 6 million because many were in Russia and places like that. But there's no question in my mind, because they have 1 million, that's a lot where I come from. Okay? They were willing to take it all the Jews from Germany, Austria, Czechoslovakia, and such places in 37, 38, 39. Think about what I'm saying. Because Manchuria is gigantic, and it's it should be economically exploited. And they said, bring the Jews. To their mind, it's the protocols of Zion in a good way, as I said before. They're bringing money, they're bringing all the rest of it. And, a lot of Jewish, Stephen Wise, the famous rabbi, he was the big liberal. He said, the Japanese, like the Nazis, no Jew should go there. You understand? And we're totally opposed to that. On the other hand, there were whole communities in places like Mukden and Harman and other cities in Manchuria that most people have ever heard of, where lots of Jews went to, including, what's the name from this show, Seth Rotenberg's father. Grew up in this is the environment he grew up in, Wolf Rotenberg, Osham. And in May of 41, I'll say it again, Shraga Mendelovitz and Leslie Silver, let's go to the one before. They sent this guy, I couldn't get a picture, I don't know who he is, this guy Newman from Torah Das to go and see if the Japanese were on the level. And they were on the level. And he met with this important official in Azuka, and the guy said like this, he says, you send me all the Jews and we'll find a place, we think the Jews are great. He said not all my colleagues think that way, but Matsuoka thinks that way. Tojo, this is what he said. Tojo thinks that way. Prince Kanoya thinks that way. And a lot of the guys that count. And this is quite a story. This Frank Newman was so impressed that he went and he had the Silversmith make the guy a cigarette lighter case, back in the smoking days. It says, to Colonel Izuka or whatever, for your help for the Jewish people, signed by the Union of Orthodox Rabbis of America. Agudas Rabbanim. I think that's what it was. Wait a second. When the war was over, he was in Japan. Stalin wanted to bring him as a war criminal because he had fought the communists when he was in charge of Manchuria. So the Russians wanted to get him back. And so he says he's a war criminal. He's persecuting the Jews. He said, because what's he going to say in 1945, 46? So what do you call it? See, he gave MacArthur's guys, he says, look at this, And they said, what's the Union of Orthodox Rabbi? But MacArthur had a Jewish guy on the staff. He said, I guess, this is a from thing. You understand? And it saved his life. You understand? Because MacArthur's like this. The guy's not a war criminal of the Jews. And he later on, 10 years after that, in 56, 57, no, a little bit later, he donated that cigarette thing to Yad Vashem, so it's there today. So there's a story of next time you go to Israel, you can look that up if you care to. Now, American Jews don't know this, as I say before, at that time, and it doesn't take away from Japan being allied to Hitler. And as far as they're concerned, the Japanese raped China, and they're very brutal, all of which is true. They didn't see it the way I'm explaining to you. Stephen Wise said nobody should go to Manchuria. And so, as I come to my conclusion, by 1940, situation was poisoned by Japanese unilateralism, which was about to be matched by United States unilateralism at a time when Japan was seen in America as the partner for Hitler for conquering and ruling the world. And so, unfortunately, the stage was set for Pearl Harbor, but that is to be continued. Good night. We'll down Marvin in about a minute.
Was a what? Communist was a Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Oh, okay.
My father was a fellow traveler. I came from early 40s.
Very common.
And and also Shanghai, by the way, which is right on the Japanese, was the harbor.
Was the harbor
for
communist spots.
But also
Oh, for the
Shanghai,
Jews.
For the Jews,
Yeah,
100,000
yeah.
Jews survived.
Richard Zorn started.